So welcome back to our last session, session 6 of Path to Wellness, and from today we're going to have a look at, the first thing we do is our feedback around our action plans, how we got on from the last session. Then we will have a look at working with your healthcare professional and healthcare system. Then we'll have a look at weight management, and finally in our closing we'll also look towards the future, what happens after this course. So we draw our attention first of all to action planning, which is something that we always feedback on. We end with and start with each session, and if we remember what the action plan was, that was something that I would decide to do, how achievable it would be, and then we answered these sort of questions: what, how much, when, how often. We set a confidence level, how we got on. So when you think about your action plan from the last session, maybe just think about, did you manage to accomplish it? Was it partially accomplished? Did you have to change it in some way? If you did have to change it, just think to yourself there, how did you change it? And if you had to do that for some reason, that would be good self-care, self-management around doing all that. So my action plan, I'll start with myself, my action plan from last week was to bring one of those food cards with me that had the green, orange and red lights on it. So when I went shopping and I was looking at particularly the amount of salt in any of the food products I was buying, so where I could see it. So I suppose what I learned when I went around was that not all foods have those kind of traffic lights on it, but the ones that do, it was certainly very, very beneficial to kind of just look at the red, kind of jump out immediately at you anyway. So I was aiming more for the greens or oranges as well. So it was a really useful tool to have in my pocket. I could just have a look at it, just check it off against the food. So that worked really well for me. So I was really happy with that. So maybe I'd ask Shifra, how did you get on with your action plan?
So my action plan was to use something we talked about last week, which was the positive affirmations.
Yeah.
So I suppose what I planned to do was on a Friday and a Monday to spend 15 minutes on those 2 days. When I found that I was just in any kind of negative thinking, or that internal dialogue in your head was quite negative, I decided for 15 minutes on those 2 days I was going to use positive affirmations. And to help me remember that, I had a sticker in my car, a sticker in my bedroom and a sticker in the kitchen. So that was for 15 minutes on each of those 2 days. And it worked really well. It was nice to have something positive there to remind me. And I wrote it down specifically as a positive statement.
Nice.
So that was good.
Oh, well done.
Yeah.
Great. That's fantastic. That was a nice one. So our action planning, as you can see, we've been doing it for each session as we've worked along. And when you were back in the group at the start, we started off on that process. So we would remind you that action planning is one of the tools that are in the toolbox. And remember, all our tools are used to break into this symptom cycle that creeps up now and then. So you can really see how action planning really works and helps us to tackle some of these areas that are up here. Although this is our last session now and we kind of draw to a close in terms of our action planning, as the weeks go on further, it's to kind of use it in a way as a tool to start off anytime you want to kind of challenge yourself or do something that you want to do, remember something that you want to or decide to do, start with your action plan. If in your book, your course book, on page 26, there is a copy of an action plan there. And she's just going to show it to you there, page 26. So we would recommend, and we know from past clients who attended our group, that the action planning has lived on with them as it goes forward. So use that to structure it, set it, see if it's achievable, did you accomplish it, keep it going like you have been doing it all through the other sessions. Okay, so that is our feedback. And remember, just one final word on action plans, that if you do encounter a difficulty or anything like that with it, use our problem solving steps back here. So what was the difficulty with your plan? Were there any other ideas that would help? You could ask somebody else to come up with some ideas that could help you. Select one, try and change it up a little bit. So there's always a way around it. Even if your action plan hasn't worked, kind of have a little think around it. What could I do to try and change it? Okay, so we move on to our second activity today, and that is going to be working with your healthcare professional and healthcare system. So I'll hand you back to Shifra now. Okay, thank you.
Okay, welcome back. So, as Fergal said, we're on session 6 and we're going to look at the second topic for today, which is working with healthcare system and healthcare professionals. So, this is something that obviously can cause a lot of frustration for people, and particularly in this COVID-19 environment, there are challenges there. So before we just get into this piece, maybe you want to get a pen and a paper, because we're actually going to get you to jot down one or two things that will kind of prompt your thinking as we're going through the session. So I'm going to pause for a second just to allow you to do that. Okay, great. Hopefully that's worked for you. So getting good healthcare can sometimes be difficult, and there are really two types of problems that people encounter in terms of that. One has to do with the healthcare system itself, so for example getting through on the telephone or getting an appointment, so that's one kind of problem. The other type of problem relates to working directly with your healthcare professionals, so that's including perhaps consultants, GPs, practice nurses, physiotherapists, OTs, phlebotomists who take blood, all of those kinds of people. So let's look at both of these, and we're going to do a free think, and you're familiar with a free think, which is where we pose a question and then we ask you at home to maybe think of one or two ideas that would answer this question, and then we'll share with you some ideas that we have and that previous participants of the course have also suggested. So let's go and do that next. So the first free think that we have on this issue is, what problems do you have with your surgery or your hospital or clinic? And that's the piece that we were saying around kind of the healthcare system as such. So what problems do you have with your surgery, hospital or clinic? So maybe just take your pen and paper and just jot down, even from your very recent engagement with your hospital or GP system, what difficulties you encountered there. Just give you a moment on that. Great, okay, so hopefully you've come up with one or two items there, and we'll share with you others that we have in the course. So in response to what problems do you have with your surgery or hospital or clinic, again, some other participants just like you who've been part of the Paths to Wellness programme with us before have suggested things like not being able to see the same consultant or not being able to see the same GP, particularly if it's a bigger, one of the larger and newer, bigger practices. That can be frustrating. Another issue that's come up for people is automated phone calls, again, because practices are busier and bigger, things become automated, and you can find that you may be quite a long time on the phone trying to get through to somebody or to get clarity around an appointment or whatever. A third issue that's come up here is too little time with the healthcare professionals. When you actually do get to sit in front of them, there's so much that you possibly want to get to talk about and clarify that it just feels like there's just too little time. That's a real difficulty, we know that. And then the final one that participants have mentioned before is that waiting lists are an issue, and we know that in our COVID health system at the moment, waiting lists are something that is going to have a lot of work needed in terms of the next couple of months to get all of the people who have been needing appointments back into the system safely. So what we might do there is maybe do a problem solve on one or two of these. So I'm going to ask Fergal maybe to come in on that. And just looking at it, Fergal, I'm thinking maybe that this would be one that people are invariably going to find a difficulty around, kind of just not having enough time when you do finally get to sit in front of somebody to talk about. So from a problem solving perspective, any ideas on that? What might help?
I don't know, I was thinking about that. Maybe if before you went in, or something like that, you could just write down on a page a couple of important questions that you want to ask first. So they're up there on a little card, a little page, to write it down so that that's, when you go in, you can say hello to the doctor obviously, or whoever it is that you're seeing, and then you have your questions ready to go there at the start, the first couple of them. that might be just some way to, although time might be short, it might be possible to get across what you want to kind of
So that's kind of a way of keeping you on track,
Yeah,
making sure you make the best use of that time.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good, nice
something
idea.
like that.
Nice idea. Yeah, and I think it does help if you give yourself that sense of preparedness and have it there. It's almost like you have an agenda for your meeting,
Indeed.
like we
Indeed.
have for each of the
Yeah,
sessions
yeah,
that we do
absolutely,
here.
absolutely.
Okay, good, great.
Yeah.
What about a kind of a problem solve in terms of waiting lists? And we know that with COVID, that's going to be something that people will need clarity and
Tricky one.
confidence around.
It definitely is a tricky one. I think maybe first of all, maybe you could ring to wherever
Okay.
you're waiting for and just find out what sort of feedback you're getting, what sort of wait time are you looking at, and maybe you could make a note of that yourself, that on, whatever date it was, I rang and I was told it's...
So maybe in a diary?
Yeah, something like that. Absolutely, that'd be a good idea, yeah. Maybe
Okay.
on your phone, whatever, something like
Or
that.
phone, yeah.
You could do that,
Okay.
and then maybe in a month's time you could ring again just to see whether any progress has been made or anything different has happened, maybe something like that.
And you could maybe even with your phone put a little reminder for
Yeah,
a month on
yeah.
to actually do that.
That'd be a good idea. Yeah,
So a bit
I
of
like that.
persistence.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that would be important.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, do that.
okay.
Um,
Anything else that we can do while we're waiting? When
Oh.
we're on a waiting list for a service,
Yeah.
what can we do to kind of help with part of that anxiety and to just make ourselves as well as we can be while we're waiting for that consultation?
yeah, that's good actually. Yeah, I mean, I think that could be difficult, the whole kind of, worrying about it or
Yeah.
thinking about it or something like that. So maybe even something from the toolbox or even
Okay.
something like that around the breathing techniques, that you went through with the pulse breathing, just to help with that kind of, I know sometimes when I'm a bit stressed or something like that, if I do a little bit of breathing, it just kind of calms it down a
calm the
little
body.
bit, just to calm
Yeah.
myself down.
Yeah.
The piece around maybe some emotions, writing down maybe at a certain time what you're feeling like or
Yeah.
something like that, and to think of the kind of, is there anything I can do with that?
Yeah.
While understanding obviously you're going to be frustrated or it's very stressful or tough on you, but there might be just something around that to do that while you're waiting, maybe.
Yeah,
Could be something.
absolutely. And I'm thinking kind of the physical activity thing, because people have been
Okay.
inside for so long,
Yeah.
just maybe making sure that they're still able to use the really nice exercises at the beginning of the book, just in terms of arm lifts,
Yes.
judging where you are, not pushing yourself, but just doing something to make you feel a little bit more physically fit. Because
Yes.
I think people will be a bit out of condition if they've been
I
inside
think
for
you're
so
right.
long.
Yeah, I think that's a nice one.
So
yeah.
physical activity, breathing techniques, and a bit of compassion and maybe naming the emotions that
Exactly.
you're feeling.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's more there. There's obviously the problem solving bit again, which is what we're doing right now. Using your mind in terms of maybe distraction
Yeah.
techniques and healthy eating and being aware of weight management, which we're going to get on to
Absolutely.
in a couple of minutes
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. They'd all be
Okay.
important. Yeah.
So that's a nice problem solve around that. Thanks, Virgil.
No problem.
In terms of what problems do you have with your surgery, hospital, clinic? We're looking here specifically at too little time with healthcare professionals, maybe writing down on a card what you want to make sure that even though you're polite when you go in, that you've an agenda and you want to get through that. And then on waiting lists, maybe just a little bit of persistence, but also a sense that I'm doing something active around this. Ringing and maybe putting a note in your diary or in your phone to ring again in a month's time, and then also maybe referencing some of the other activities from the problem solving toolbox that we've looked at, the self-management toolbox there as well. Okay, so we're now going to do a second free think, and this time slightly different focus. So the question we have now are, what problems do you have with your doctor or healthcare professionals? So this is less about the system, but more about the actual individual consultant or doctor or physio or OT or whomever it is that you're actually sitting down with. So again, I'm just going to pause for a minute to just see if you might be able to write. It makes it much more engaging and real if you actually write down maybe one or two things right now that are a current difficulty for you in response to this question. Okay, great. Hopefully that's been useful for you. That took a bit of time. So here again are some of the responses from people like you who have been on this programme with us in the past, what they have contributed. People with lots of different physical and chronic health conditions, but also people who are having some mental health difficulties as well. So, what problems do you have with your doctor, healthcare professional? So, one that comes up a lot on all of the programmes then, and all of the times we've run this programme, is language and a lack of clarity around language. And I think we all need to be a bit more assertive about this one. So, uses language I don't understand. Another one that people note is that sometimes the GP doesn't fully explain the medication and a full sense of why it is that this is actually being added to the existing number of medications I'm taking, and taking the time to really work through that. Maybe these two link a little bit, too quick to prescribe, maybe looking at other solutions first. But again, you have to kind of work with your GP on this one. And that sense of always feeling there's a hurry, that there's just not enough time to sit with you to look through the difficulties that you're particularly having, and that you want to have a really good conversation with somebody about. So just like the previous free think, we're going to maybe take one or two of these and just pull it out and do a bit of a problem solve about it. And again, this is around constantly, when we feel frustrated about something, how do we use that energy to convert it into something that's actually going to help us? And problem solving can really do that. It's a really good use of that frustration energy. So, Fergal, maybe I'd ask you to come in and we can bounce something around here. So, what will we look at here? What do you think?
I know with some people like too quick to prescribe or that. I don't know. I suppose that'd be back around to that piece a little bit of asking if the doctor is prescribing something, you're just asking why, or is there something else if you weren't, just a couple of questions around it. Sometimes I think we just get the prescription and go with that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe a question around why, or what is this medication going to do for me, or something like that.
Okay.
And if it is something like that, is there something else I could be doing as well, or something like that? Something that's
so
not medication.
In addition to this, what else can I do?
What else could be good for me to do?
Yeah. It's a little bit around that notion of agency, that I don't want to just be taking a pill, I want to be doing things for myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what else can I do? So that's nice. I think that's helpful, that's useful. What about always in a hurry? The sense that the healthcare professionals are always in a hurry. What can we do there?
I suppose they can be.
It's a busy system.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Maybe it is, again, is it a little bit like the other one? Having it in your mind, knowing that you're always going to have only an X amount of time in there.
Yeah.
What do I really want to get out of this when I get in there?
Yeah.
What is it that I want to ask?
Yeah.
And again, have that kind of greeting, sure, but what is really first? What would I like to ask? Do you know what I mean?
I agree with you. And I'm wondering as well if something about the tone of our conversation, there's a need for a little bit more assertion, not moving into aggression.
Yeah.
But not being passive, being a little assertive in terms of being clear what it is that you need from this consultation.
I think that would be really good. And I think also, because it's going to be short or something like that, maybe just do a little bit of breathing just before you go in, so that you're nice and calm.
Absolutely.
Give yourself a chance to think, because I know sometimes if you're in with the doctor or whoever it is, you're listening and your own thoughts can kind of just drift away a little bit or not quite be there. So if I do a little bit of breathing, it gives me a chance maybe to catch up a little bit.
Just one other one that come to mind actually. When you've come out of the consultation, and people aren't going to be hanging around in GP clinics long, it might be good as soon as you go to your car to maybe just make a note. Because your head's probably flying in lots of different directions. What does this mean? But maybe if you just go, okay, right, just keep it in my mind what was said there, and make a quick note of it, so that when you get home you can then do the reflective piece, thinking about it and the implications.
Exactly.
But at least you get a clear sense of writing down directly exactly what the person said to you.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
nice. I like
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Thanks for
Not at
that.
all.
So, I think that was helpful to do that bit of a problem solve there. Problem solving, as I said, is one of our real trump cards to put out on these occasions. So one way to work with healthcare professionals, again, is to kind of come back to that community. It's so much based on communication and talking with somebody. So we're going to come back again to the notion of I messages. We looked at that a couple of sessions back. And I messages means that you're reporting on how the actions of someone else makes you feel. So for example, when I have to wait a long time, I feel angry and frustrated. So using that I word very clearly in that communication. So remember that healthcare professionals have problems too, and particularly are possibly stretched with the current COVID pandemic. They work under many constraints, such as time limits and lack of information. That's why it's important to keep them informed about our own conditions. They are just as frustrated sometimes as we are and can be. So to use the time we have most effectively, it's good to bring up concerns we might have at the beginning of the appointment, rather than waiting until we're going out the door to ask questions. So be polite, as we always do as Irish people, like a quick chat, whether or whatever, but then go straight into what it is that you have on your agenda that you need to clarify. In order to work effectively with members of our healthcare team, we've got a chart that we're going to have a quick look at here, which uses the word PA or T to just help in terms of memory. So, thanks for them. So, take part. P is prepare, A is ask, or is repeat, T is take action. So I'm just going to go through that with you if you don't mind. So prepare is keep track of your symptoms and monitor what's going on between visits to your doctor. For example, are symptoms better? Are they worse? Are they the same? Are changes slow or slowish? Are they more rapid? Are you noticing that they're more rapid? Has anything changed in your life that would affect you? And clearly there, the experience of a pandemic in our country is going to impact there. And also be sure to write this down along with what you are doing currently to manage the symptoms, and whether or not what you've done to manage the symptoms has been helping you or actually has not particularly helped. This will help you spot trends or patterns in your condition, and also help your consultant or your GP to see if there are any trends when you're reporting this back. So the next one is to report on your symptom changes and patterns in between visits. Also report on any medications or other treatments, including those over-the-counter ones that we spoke about before that you may be using, and if they're having any effect. And then list your main concerns or questions. So ask these at the beginning of the visit. If you have more than 2 or 3 questions, give the whole list to the doctor, but do not expect answers perhaps to more than 2 or 3 on that particular visit. But it's useful that they'll know the full list that was a concern to you. Your doctor should see the whole list. However, because something that may not seem important to you may be important medically. So that really helps, again, in terms of what we were talking about. Prepare that list beforehand. And maybe keep a copy of that list if it's a case that you're actually going to be handing over the one you had written out for your GP, or take a phone shot of it. So ask then is the next part of our part. Ask questions about your diagnosis, about tests, about medications, and about the next follow-up. And then repeat back the doctor. So this is a really nice one if you can hold on to your sense of presence to do this. People find it really helps with memory and recall. So repeat back to the doctor the key points discussed during the visit, like the diagnosis, what to expect, the next steps, and treatment options, treatment actions. This gives both of you an opportunity to correct any miscommunications. So if you have repeated something, your GP, your consultant has a chance to jump in and say, actually no, I meant this. It also gives a good idea to take notes so you can remember exactly what was discussed and what you agreed to do. And then the last part of take part is take action. So take action if there are barriers to you following your consultant or your GP's recommendations, then let them know at that time if there are actually any barriers. that are specific to you or your household or what's going on in your life that they may not know about unless you let them know about it. So ask your doctor to give you written instructions if appropriate, and if you are not given written instructions, write yourself an action plan for what you will do on the follow-up visit. So that might be an opportunity to go straight to your action plan once you've actually come out of that consultation and see how you're going to fit in what, how much, when and how often in terms of that. I'm going to sneeze. I'm okay. So, basically, just to conclude that section, excuse me for that little interlude, doctors feel frustrated that they can't cure our health conditions too. So there is that sense that they do have a sense of frustration about their role and their job and what they can do. And remember that they are people. So again, a thank you now and again helps both sides to remain in that kind of good way of communicating with each other, particularly when this is a challenging time for so many people. So that brings us to the end of that section. So take part, P-A or T, prepare, ask, repeat, then take action.
Thanks, Shifra. So we'll move on now to activity 3 today, weight management. So most of us would like to make changes in our weight. Indeed, most of us would like to lose some weight, but some of us indeed may want to gain weight as well. But in order to do either of these things, we have to know what are we actually doing now. And that was the purpose when we asked in the last couple of sessions to take a note in a food diary of what you were eating, maybe on 2 days in the week, maybe during the weekday and maybe one day at the weekend. So if you can think about that now, maybe have a little note there in your notebook that you have at home about what you've looked at. Think about it. What have you learned? What have you seen? Have you seen any different change or any pattern? Anything like that? And you can just think about it now even for a moment or two. If you want to hit the pause and think about it for a second, you can come back and join us. Okay, well, we've kind of looked at some things that maybe we've learned or that maybe past clients have told us as well what they learned at this point. So you can see here, so what have I learned? I suppose this exercise is particularly even to the times that we live in right now, that during this lockdown phase of the COVID-19 pandemic, that it has made a lot of things different and harder, I guess, to cope with. And certainly we know around the whole area of weight management, the important role that exercise plays. We know that due to the lockdown, maybe has made it harder for people to exercise at the moment, to get out and move around. Now, I think by the time you get to see this, the restrictions are lifting a wee bit, so we can get out a little bit more than we've been so far. So that's good news in that regard. I think other ones that kind of stand out to me here, certainly when I was thinking about myself, I think a couple of sessions ago I set myself the goal, my action plan for a week was to eat a healthy breakfast, and my idea of a healthy breakfast was to have a banana with my breakfast, which was always a really good intention. And I think over the past I've noticed in myself that I could have really good intentions around eating certain foods or not eating certain foods and stuff like that. But in that example, when I wanted to add the banana to my breakfast, I suppose I needed to buy the bananas first. It kind of seems like an obvious point, but I really needed to do that. So I think good food intentions does require very good food planning as well. Indeed, I think maybe we've all noticed that, I don't know, I think when we're just stuck inside and we can't go anywhere, or maybe there's not many people around, stuff like that, we can tend to just graze and snack a little bit more as well. So it's the kind of, that could be something that could happen as well. Maybe Shifra, have you noticed anything? Or
I think it's hard. I think all of us have found that we're snacking more, and there seems to be gaps in the day. And you're, what'll I do?
Yes.
I'll have another cup of tea.
Yeah.
And I'll have another Vicky.
Yeah.
But one thing that somebody told me about, I can't remember who it was, a couple of years ago, somebody said, when you just feel that it can be boredom as much as anything,
Indeed.
get up and maybe go and have a glass of water. If you feel tempted to go and have something to eat. So maybe just do that to kind of stall and see if you still feel hungry afterwards.
Yeah.
And the thing that I've really learned is that, you know, getting nice fruit is important. So
Sure.
take your time picking some nice ripe fruit, and then maybe stuff that needs to ripen over a week.
Yeah.
But if you don't have it in your house, you're not going to be able to use it.
Yeah.
And it can be a really nice alternative to a biscuit or a cake or something with butter. So
Nice.
it can be nice to have some fruit. So yeah, they can all help with just
Oh, for sure.
managing weight.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
also the importance of kind of maybe being a bit more flexible because our bodies have been moving a little less.
Indeed, yeah. Thanks very much for that, Shifra. So, as you can see at home, we can really learn a lot just by observing our own behaviour. And we're going to take a moment now and just look over some of the basics of weight management. So, thanks, Shifra, just put that out. Shot. Lovely. So, for most people, how much we weigh depends on how much we eat and how much energy that we then use up, or how much of a physical activity we do. Also, I suppose our genetics can also influence our weight. Earlier in the course, we talked about exercise and physical activity and how to increase it. Many of you have been making real progress in the area that we've heard, and certainly with clients from before, that's been one area that a lot of people have latched onto, going out for nice walks and things like that. However, although exercise helps greatly with weight management, we do need to watch what we eat. And if I can direct your attention to chart 27 here, our last chart in all the charts that we've had, is this one is entitled Maintaining a Healthy Weight, and we'll just talk our way through this. So the first thing to look at here is to pay attention to portion size. Larger portions make it harder to lose weight and can also lead to weight gain, while smaller portions can help lead to weight loss. And I think that's even the one that why most people kind of gain weight is the size of the portions, so that's an important one to have a look at. You can also use the Eat Well plate to choose your food. If you hopefully remember the Eat Well plate, it's in your course book, we just showed up there, page 181.
181.
Go on,
Yeah.
great. So if you remember that, it was divided up into fruit and vegetables. We look for 5 of those a day, and don't include potatoes in that. Then the second category was around bread, rice, potatoes and pasta, and to try and choose a whole grain variety of those. About a fifth of the plate was for milk or dairy products, and our calcium fortified soya milk. The next smaller section is for meat, fish, eggs and other non-dairy sources of protein such as beans and pulses. And the smallest section is for food or drinks high in fat and or sugar. So the Eat Well plate is definitely a good guide for us during the day. Remember, we didn't have to get it right every meal, but maybe over the course of the day, even the course of the week, would be really important. Thirdly, we'd say to try and maintain a healthy weight, to limit foods with more than 5 grams of fat per portion. So avoid foods with saturated or trans fats. And if you remember, how would we readily identify those sort of fats? Well, basically they're the ones that are solid at room temperature. So butter would be a classic example of that, whereas olive oil wouldn't. It would be a different type, it would be unsaturated. Okay. Fourthly here, eat our 5 portions of fruit and veg a day. That's still the basic kind of guideline, and there are other guidelines out there, maybe 8 pieces, 10 pieces, but certainly if you aim for towards the 5, that would be a great start. The fifth one here, drink water or broth-based soups. Why would we do that? Well, these foods tend to be filling and help you eat less during the meal. If you're trying to gain weight, have these at the end of your meal. Number 6, plan your meals and snacks and plan for regular eating times. So again and again, the times that we're kind of living in, grazing and just grabbing the first food you see tends to lead to weight gain. And the last one down here, number 7, eat breakfast. So people who eat breakfast find it actually easier to lose weight. So it gives you a good start to the day, so it's really important. So changing weight is not something we can do in a hurry. If we take small steps, we can make big changes. So again, your action plan could be really useful at this point, because we're going to break it down into smaller steps to make the overall goal more achievable. One way to do it is to use the 200 calorie a day plan. So At this stage you all know how to keep track of your exercise and also how to use a food diary to keep track of what you eat. So if you think about this one, it's really, if each day we add about 100 calories of exercise, that's around 20 minutes of exercise, and we reduce about 100 calories of food, that would be around a slice of bread or a small biscuit. Over a year's time, this can add up to 20 pounds or 9.9 kilos of weight loss. So you can see, if you wanted to lose weight, maybe small steps you could take, doable, achievable to an overall goal. Of course, if you're trying to gain weight, you should not cut down on your exercise, but you should add 100 to 200 calories a day to what you eat. This may be challenging. You may eat several times a day and eat high calorie food, solid or liquid. So these recommendations work for most people, but if it doesn't work for you, we would advise that you get some help. Start with discussing your needs with your doctor or nurse, who may then also refer you on to a dietitian for you to attend at a clinic. But do remember that weight management, which is kind of coupled very much with our healthy eating section that we did a little while ago, weight management is a tool in our toolbox that is used to tackle some of our symptoms up here. So anything that we can do around our weight management could help us with some physical limitations, for example. Can also help around breaking around pain, shortness of breath, even fatigue. So it can be a really powerful tool, but it's important that you use it in a way that makes it achievable or doable. So that's where, again, our action plan would really help you with that. Okay, so that's the end of that section. So I'll hand you back to Shifra now, who looking into the future after the course finishes. Thank you.
Okay, so we're now going to do something which I think is a nice way to come to a full circle in terms of this Paths to Wellness programme, which is about looking back and then planning a little bit in terms of the future. So as we've said throughout this course, having a long-term physical and or mental health condition creates its own vicious cycle of symptoms, and they can be really challenging, and it's an ongoing commitment to address them. But as we know, each symptom can make the others worse, and this in turn causes problems that make our lives more difficult to navigate. Our paths become a bit rougher with more ups and downs while we're going through these cycles, and we experience twists and turns. We shared some of these problems both at the beginning and during the course. And just as an example of that, if we look at our symptom cycle here, you can imagine that if somebody is experiencing pain on an ongoing basis or even on an intermittent basis, it's very likely that that's going to impact in terms of poorer sleep. So we can see how, in this context, pain and poor sleep, we need to do something to break into that cycle, to manage that symptom cycle or that symptom link better. And again, in terms of kind of more mental health difficulties, we know that if people are experiencing significant amounts of depression, that it's much more likely that they're going to be experiencing also significant amounts of fatigue. So how do we get to address each of those separately? And here, sleep and pain. And there are ways that we can do that, we've learned throughout the course. So however, we've also stopped to examine ways to manage these problems and break the symptom cycle at different points. And that's why we have this deliberate kind of dashed line here to show that it's not a full cycle. We can break into it. We can actually break into it. So we're going to do a free think, and the question that we're going to free think about is, what are the self-management tools we've learned in this course? So what we might do now is maybe just, actually, can I take that piece there? Yeah, lovely. So we have it over here, but just in case you might want to see it a little bit more clearly, I'm just going to read through the self-management toolbox that we have. So we have physical activity, we've got medication usage, we've got helping you to make some decisions, we have action planning that's running right through the program, breathing techniques, understanding emotions, problem solving, a great one, using your mind in terms of distraction for short-term interventions when you may be experiencing pain or other difficulties, sleep, communication, that piece about using iMessages, healthy eating and weight management, which we've looked at again today, and then ideas about working with healthcare professionals as well. Thanks, Virgo. So it's a really full toolbox. There are lots of options there and things that you can use in an active way to help with your experience of managing a long-term chronic condition. So for example, if we kind of look at this a little bit more, so physical activity can break the cycle at almost any point. So if we see here physical activity, it can break this cycle at almost any point, engaging in some physical activity. The techniques to manage symptoms through the mind can break it at pain, or in relation to fatigue, or stress, or emotions. So that was that point that we had. You might remember at the start we talked about this idea of speaking about a lemon and then people experiencing these salivation in their mouth and that bitter kind of sense of a taste of lemon. But at the time when we talked about that, there was actually no lemons in the room. It was your mind creating that sensation. So our mind is a very important tool to use in terms of this toolbox. And then problem solving. So we know here we've got problem solving, decision making, and action planning. These three are the really kind of the three legs of the stool that actually help all of the other tools in the toolbox to work so much better. So you do not have to use all of these tools. That's not the idea that you would use all of them and have a feel that you have to use all of them. Rather, what we have found is that people, including ourselves, might use 2 or 3 or maybe 4, and they become the core ones that they go back to and use again and again. And they help to work to break that cycle. So something may work better at one time than it does at another. So there are a variety of tools in this box. That's why they're so different. And we can choose from these tools depending on the circumstances at the time where we need some extra help. So once the cycle is broken, it is broken. But as we know, these cycles can return. And so the cycle can repair itself. So breaking into it again at repeated intervals is going to be important, and being kind of reflective of the fact that you may need to break into this cycle at a number of times throughout the next number of months to ensure that you have achieved what you want to achieve. So now let's take a few minutes to think about the steps that we'll take next in managing our individual healthcare conditions. So I suppose here what we're thinking about is that it can be helpful in terms of looking at the next 3 months and perhaps then the next 6 months. So if we say the next 3 months is kind of June, July, August, the next 6 months would be up to October, am I right? August, September, October, November, sorry, up to November, which takes us right back into a kind of a winter cycle. So it might be helpful now to think about, in the next 3 months, which is predominantly going to be across our summertime, what goals do you have for yourself in the next 3 months? What are the things that are important to you? And we know about action planning. It has to be something that you want to do or decide to do. So what goals might be important for you in the next 3 months? And then separately, maybe slightly different goals that you might have over the next 6 months. Maybe just take a moment to think about that. Virgil, can we maybe ask you to?
Yeah.
So 2 questions. So
Sure.
what's your next goal? And then I suppose working off the action plan, what are the specific steps that you plan to reach that goal?
Okay. Well, my goal over the next 3 months would be to lose some weight. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to break it down. So I have my action plans from over the last few sessions. So I'm certainly going to keep them in mind. So I will have my walking that I've started, so I'm going to keep that going. I'm going to note in the food diary what I'm eating at different points, maybe every couple of weeks or something like that, and just see am I on track. And my third step would be it kind of struck me there from one of my previous action plans that in order for me to actually achieve this, I need to plan it a little bit more. So that's going to be a really important step there of knowing what I want to eat.
Okay.
And being involved in getting it and bringing it into the house so that it's more likely that I can actually eat the right sort of stuff. So they will be my steps to achieving a weight loss over 3 months.
Great, okay, well good luck with that.
Thank you very
Will be
much.
good self-care.
Thank you.
Okay, so I suppose for myself, my next goal is, well, one is to continue, I'm not an exercise person, but I found that when I started putting into my pocket this little step counter, I became a little bit competitive about it. So 3 times a week I have been going for a walk for 30 minutes after work. And I'm enjoying that, and I'm going to keep up with that. So I'm pleased with that goal. That's going to be my kind of 6-month one. I'm going to try and keep that going over the 6 month. And then my shorter term goal, which is something I do want to achieve in terms of wanting to achieve, and I do think it's achievable, and I'll have to work at it, is that I don't work on a Friday, but I usually end up Friday morning looking at the house and going, okay, I've got this housework to do. And kind of, I can be a little bit resentful about that and kind of go, okay, right, I'm tired, but I need to do this before the weekend can start. So my decision is that I will write into my diary, my home diary, which is the one on the kitchen counter, every Friday, a week in advance, I'm going to put something in for the following Friday that I will do at 9 o'clock, between 9 and 12, so that I have some planning there to make sure that the first thing that I do is not housework. And then I can come back to it later in the afternoon and enjoy it maybe. So that's my action plan for the next period of time, and I'm curious and interested and confident. I think I'll give it an 8 out of 10 in terms of getting there. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Good luck with that.
Great, thank you. So I hope that you too have had some sense of how you can create, using your action plan, some specific goals for the next 3 months and for the next 6 months that will be ones that really are important to you and that are achievable. So now I suppose what we'd like to do now is maybe to encourage you at home, in your own homes, to just acknowledge what you've accomplished. You've each decided at the start to look for a referral to Paths to Wellness, and we're very grateful that you did. We always enjoy delivering this programme. And you followed through that with your GP or your physio, whatever, and then you came, I think most of you came to session 0, is what we call it, which is just an introductory session where we talked about this programme. So you showed commitment in that, and then you attended session 1, and you attended session 2, and then something outside of all of our control, COVID, became involved, and it meant that we weren't able to complete the programme. But I think Fergal and myself both felt that we wanted to find a different way of continuing and getting to the end of session 6 of this. So that's why we've put this time into recording this for you. But we're hopeful that now that we're going to be sending this to you, that you will have been able to invest in the time and the commitment that you showed at the start of this programme by watching each of the 4 sessions, 3, 4, 5 and 6 that we're sending to you. So we would like to acknowledge your commitment and your sense of wanting to also accomplish and achieve this outcome in completing Paths to Wellness. So well done in relation to that. We know that a couple of weeks back we discussed the idea of maybe writing a letter about this programme, what it means to you, what you find helpful, or maybe things that you find not helpful. And perhaps you might want to send that to your GP, or you can send it in to us. The reason we ask people or invite people to do that, it's not compulsory, but we do invite people to do it, is so that other people can get to learn a little bit more about this programme. And there will be some inventive ways in which we're going to try and reach people with this programme over the next couple of months. So as I said, you can write in a letter to us if you wish to, about the experience of participating in this programme. And I think the other thing that we would like to do is to maybe acknowledge your commitment and to perhaps invite you to, I'm sorry, I'm going to pause there. Were we going to do a clap there? I couldn't remember. So just in relation to that idea of letters, we might want to, we are going to share with you some feedback that we have had from other people who actually attended the programme and we typically send people out a kind of a feedback form, which is separate from their letter, just to get a sense of them feeling that they can communicate directly back with us. So Fergal's going to show us a little bit of what has been written.
So this is an example. This is the sort of questionnaire that we'll just send you out. Feedback for ourselves. This really helps us in the service in general, and also in terms of past wellness, how we can help with the programme going forward. So this person, they felt it was good to talk and share their story. They also found that a lot of people on the group, they were coming with different problems, but they found common ground with each other in the group, and I think that was really helpful. That kind of comes through a lot of our feedbacks as well. So that was that person. This was an interesting one, and it's kind of come across from people in the past as well, that the course has helped galvanise them a little bit, and it helps them to, as it says here, help me to do things I've been promising myself for years.
Okay, right.
So I think that can often be just around maybe making the plan to do it, that kind of thing. The support from the group as well can be really good. Another person found that the book was very useful as a reference point, and they liked the kind of information on food and that we worked through as well. So that was a sort of flavour of some of the
And that kind of fits in with that idea that kind of you might decide that there are 2 or 3 of the self-management tools that you will use particularly.
Exactly.
And then if the cycle seizes up again, you go back in and say, what else can I come to this toolbox to make out?
Exactly.
Okay, great. Thanks, Fergal.
No problem at all.
So again, I think one of the things we really wanted to point out to you is that you have done one very important thing in attending this programme, and that is that you have actually helped each other. And I think Fergal and I both would have been very conscious, session 1 and session 2, there was a lovely building sense of that group, and we missed the fact that we didn't actually get to complete sessions 3, 4, 5 and 6 with all of you together for very obvious reasons. But it was clear on those first 2 sessions that there was a real generosity of people helping each other. I remember across the room, lots of conversations going, and a lovely sense of, actually this might work, and good interaction in terms of problem solving and helping other people out on that. So I think that's really important, and we know that people who help each other are happier typically and healthier, so that's something that you should be very proud of. We can all find ways to be useful in our lives with the people around us. So I think maybe at this point we'd like to acknowledge that. So I hope that you also at home will acknowledge yourself and maybe make a loud, noise to acknowledge that you've completed this course. Well done. Well done. And hopefully you might also let somebody in your household, a friend or somebody know that you've committed to and worked through the Paths to Wellness programme, and that's been tough to do in this time, but you've achieved it, so well done. So we're coming to our close here now, and I suppose closing at session 6, there is sometimes a small sense of sadness with people that the group is kind of breaking up. It's finished at this point, but we hope that you'll continue to use the Paths to Wellness toolbox and be conscious of that cycle, that symptom cycle, to help you through these coming months. We know that the course book is a really useful resource. Fergal had just mentioned it there in the feedback, and we've made specific reference to a couple of pages in that this week to make sure that helps you to prompt the exact page that you might want to find some additional information on. So continue to use that, and maybe if there's somebody else in your house who's interested, show them it as well. We want to wish you the very best in the future. So we will be sending you out a feedback form, and if you have feedback that you would like to send back to us, we'll send that in a stamp addressed envelope, and we would really like to receive it. And we genuinely enjoy reading both some of the critical and the more complimentary comments. They're always constructive.
Absolutely, it always helps to improve the course as it goes forward. Absolutely, for sure.
So thank you very much from myself, Sherfra.
And thanks very much for watching. Really, it was great working with you from back in February to now. So hope you've enjoyed this online version of it.
And take care.
Thank you.
So now we're going to do a short visualization exercise
really to help reinforce our positive feelings about the progress that each of us have made during the last 6 weeks of the Paths to Wellness programme. We're going to visualise ourselves successfully fulfilling the plans we just made for our future, those plans for the next 6 months and those plans for the next 3 months as well. So close your eyes, breathe deeply 3 times, in through your nose and all the way down to your abdomen, and then out slowly through pursed lips. Think about your progress and your many accomplishments during the last 6 and more weeks. Each week you reported success in completing your action plans and used your problem-solving skills to make the changes you needed to reach your weekly goals. You took time to explore new ways to use your mind with activities like distraction, positive thinking, to help you deal with the rough spots on your path. You learned more about healthy eating, better sleep, and discovered new exercises to add to your healthy habits. And you learned more about working with your healthcare team. And you shared your knowledge, experience, and skills. And you supported and helped each other along the way. These are your many accomplishments. Now, watch yourself as you successfully plan to complete the steps you need to take to fulfill your future plans. Think about how good you feel being able to do this. Now, take 3 more deep breaths. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes.